りおしまい。
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Get the Mic, the only show where your host on the left, Owl,
And your host on the right, Brock.
dissect fiction for its mythological significance. Now, I have to apologize. It's been a bit because I got COVID recently. I would have posted about it, but unfortunately, for YouTube, you need to have 1,000 subscribers to post community updates. So until that happens, I won't be able to post any updates on there.
Right. For the longer time viewers, you might be thinking, are we going back to a Tuesday upload for YouTube? No, that's not really the intention, but we sort of got delayed by this, so our uploads have gotten spaced out differently.
Also, I don't think we're going to be able to upload this on Tuesday.
No, but so yeah.
On a Wednesday
Spoiler,
update.
we're recording on a Tuesday.
Here we are. Anyways, so we apologize for that. I got COVID, so we couldn't record unless I wanted to give Brock my COVID. Which, have you had COVID?
Maybe.
Who knows?
Right whenever it was new, I thought I had it, but
anyhow, on today's episode, to get all that out of the way, on today's episode, we're talking about episode 98 of Dragon Ball. Of course, Dragon Ball. It's called Victory's Edge, or in the Japanese, The Secret Hayuken versus Battle Power. And we're going to talk about the concept of battle power very shortly. I think before we get started, though, if you like what you hear, please give us a like. Subscribe to our channel. We upload new episodes on YouTube, typically Mondays and Thursdays. This one will probably go up on Thursday, I think. We also upload on Rumble Tuesdays and Fridays, so give us a subscribe over there. We'd also love to hear what you have to say in the comments, whether you agree or you disagree. Without further ado, I don't think anything else, Brock. You want to go ahead and get into it?
no. Let's get into this one. It's going to be a big episode.
So this is Victory's Edge. So the first thing we see is Tien launches into a technique he calls the volleyball attack, tossing Goku up like a volleyball and spiking him into the ground. Goku notes, upon recovering, that Tien won't die if he uses his full strength and says that he can now fight at battle strength versus match strength, I believe it is.
Right. Tien calls him on this bluff, and he says that clearly that's it's one of the poorer examples of a bluff that he's seen. And Goku says, "No, really, I was fighting at match strength."
Well, it's interesting to note, right? It's almost setting limitations on it's almost the individual setting limitations on themselves for the benefit of the participation in the hierarchy. So here, Goku is at match level to fight Krillin, let's say, so that he can still gain things from the fight with Krillin without actually having to use his full potential. Because even though he's beyond Krillin's strength, that doesn't mean there aren't things that Krillin knows that he ought to know. And that whole concept and Goku lowering himself down to the match level so that he can absorb those things are part of that openness and some of the lessons he learned from Korin.
It's an empathy that Goku has in his character where he's part of what I think he's learned by going out into the world and traveling is this empathy towards the human experience outside of his own. And so I think that's sort of tied into the way that Goku is, let's say he fights against Krillin's spirit, right? He wrestles with the way that Krillin instantiates himself in the world. So whenever he comes up against something tough, he trusts that it was good the way that Krillin was, and he pits the way that Krillin was up against him in that sense. And so it's a humility towards sort of the spirits that he's up against, right? And he thinks that, yeah, that is a good match strength. Like Krillin's ability is a good representation of the hierarchy, right? Because for Goku to act as if he were Krillin is to understand that it's good to be the way that Krillin was, right? Even though he didn't win, it's sort of an integration of, I don't want to say that which is below, but he has a respect for that he can defeat, right? He integrates
it's
from
a
a victory.
reintegration of the lessons he's learned before from Roshi that's further instantiated by Krillin. Now, what I was getting at too, that Goku's openness to the idea that even if someone he is encountering or contending with is someone who's not as integrated in the world as he, that doesn't mean there's nothing that he can learn from the interaction between him and the other character, in this case Krillin, or not really Pomp, but he doesn't really learn much from Pomp, but I think Krillin is a good example of it. And so it's almost like it's almost like someone who is a prodigy at something competitive, let's say a sport, putting limits on themselves to compete with people who aren't as good as they. If that makes sense.
Right. But
So
also
that
sort of
they-
embodying a spirit that's willing to take on something that could possibly be stronger than him.
And
Like
those,
he knows that he's most likely above them in the hierarchy as far as spirit goes, right? But he's sort of convincing himself that it would be possible for them to be able to supersede him. So he's lowering himself down to really take their spirit seriously or their perspective seriously, right?
right, exactly. And I think that that has to do with the whole point that Korin is a cat and the lessons he learned from Korin, because Korin is a cat. The whole concept of that is that it's disarming, that a cat shouldn't be this wise master, or you wouldn't think that this cat is going to be a wise master, right? And Goku has to subordinate himself to the idea of Korin's spirit in order to be able to supersede him. And so here he is kind of acting almost as a foil to these characters, to where he's mapping on to Krillin, and Krillin learns from the encounter and Goku learns from the encounter, right? And so they both grow from that, and it's a holy experience.
Right. It's different from how we'll see other Saiyans act toward battle later, right? Which is much more
The
one-sided.
You said the S word. Oh no! Oh no! Ah!
But for Goku's spirit to be as balanced as it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's a good segue into what is going on with this attack then against Goku, right?
The volleyball attack, right? Which is that exactly what I'm saying about the competitive spirit, right? It's the utilization of that to instantiate Tien above Goku in the hierarchy. And
Well,
the
something I want to point out is this is still a response to what happened in the last episode, right? Where Tien interpreted that Goku was playing with him. You know, Goku was holding himself back intentionally, and Tien is like, "How dare you sort of try to make a game out of this, right? To outwit me or to, be able to think faster than me." Especially with his original use of the what's it called? The his mirror image technique, right? And so now I think the announcer says specifically this is what it is to make sport of someone, right? And so what Tien's doing in response to Goku is making a game out of him, right? He's making sport of him literally by turning him
but
into a
not just
ball.
a game that is competitive and that Tien will win.
Right. But he's saying like this is a game of games and I'm at a game level above this game. Like
Yes.
all that he's embodying, I can just play with and spike it into the ground at my will because it's a game within the game that I'm
Right,
playing,
it's so
right?
easily thrust down from the strength of my own
And so
spirit.
he enacts it in that sense to say like I'm above this play because I've oriented myself towards something that I think is higher than this hierarchy.
And so Goku gets up and he's unaffected by the attack because let's say the upper limits of the competitiveness that's exhibited by Tien here is not something ungraspable or unknown by Goku. And so he's not really affected by the attack. He gets up and he talks about the match level and battle power that we just talked about.
Right, and Goku specifically calls out, "Oh, you're actually trying to kill me, so you're not going to die if I fight at full strength."
And so he makes battle. He adopts his battle strength.
Which that's the level above the game, right?
Level, yeah.
The game is an enactment, and one step beyond is killing your opponent, right? To take that one step toward the serious. And so Tien has said that he wants to kill Goku as revenge. And so this is sort of Goku mapping onto what his intention is. Where it's like, if I'm going to try to break your spirit, right? If I'm going to try to make a joke out of you, then he's like, "Oh, you're actually trying to kill what I am." At least in the eyes of all the spectators, which is really the point of this, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And so Goku says, "Oh, you're trying to kill me. Well, then I can actually fight you outright to protect the spirit that I represent."
And so he does. And Tien calls out Goku's statement as a bluff, like you said. But Goku launches into a powerful assault, sending Tien flying into the air and charging a Kamehameha wave. However, at the last second, Goku changes his mind and allows Tien to fall back into the ring, conserving his energy. After recovering, Tien tells Goku that he's happy that someone like him exists. Tien then meditates, floating above the ring, before squaring off against Goku once again. The two launch into a vicious exchange of attacks, evenly matched as they exchange blows. Roshi notices, though, that they haven't run out of breath at all. Goku forces Tien to the edge of the arena before being countered and driven back to the center of the ring. And so here we see a couple of exchanges, physicality. I think this is a good part to mention something that I've heard recently in the community as well, that the action parts are not storytelling. And it's the exact opposite with Dragon Ball, at least. There are some shows, I will say, that the action is not storytelling, but in Dragon Ball specifically, the action is a lot of the storytelling.
A lot of the story is being told through physicality. It's a very classical way of storytelling, right? When you think back to silent films. And there's this really classical nature to Dragon Ball, I think, as well, where things need to be acted out in a really literal sense. But they're still telling a story in the way that they do it. And I think you can really feel it out in Dragon Ball, and you can tell that there is this it's a drama that's playing out on a stage that everybody is watching. And that drama that's playing out, we're going to see in the next episode in a really specific way, right? Because this isn't, as we're going to see, it's not ultimately just about who's the strongest. It's about what does it mean to be winning a fight like this, right?
And what does it mean to be number one under the heavens?
right? What is the heavens, especially whenever the master has stepped down, right? That's sort of what the question is becoming throughout this fight.
Exactly. And so the idea that Goku wasn't bluffing is made paramount as his battle power, battle strength is apparent when he attacks Tien here. Now he doesn't use the Kamehameha wave. Roshi comments that it would only waste his energy, and it's pretty easily deduced that that's because it's not going to knock Tien out of the ring. He can basically fly, so there's no point in using it at the moment. And so Goku doesn't do that, and it shows a level of restraint in Goku that it's not the Kamehameha wave is not his only attack. And using the Kamehameha wave here, when Tien has integrated um, some of the malice and the teachings of his master and his own logos, let's say, isn't going to do anything to him substantially, and so it's not really going to hurt him, because we see that Tien's kind of the antithesis of Goku here in the way that he acts with his master, and the way that Tien is also enlightened the same way that Goku is to the malice of the world, but has adopted that malicious way despite that knowledge.
Now, I want to try to translate this a bit because here's what happens. Tien starts out with an attack against Goku where he makes a game out of him. He plays with him like a ball, right? And he uses an attack where he spikes him up in the air and then he strikes him down, right? So Goku says, "Oh, I can fight you at that level," and does it back to him and makes a game out of it, right? He knocks him flying across the arena. He dodges underneath him and puts his hands up like he's going to spike him up in the air. Then he goes past him and kicks him instead. So he tricks him. He beats him at his own game, right? And then he goes, "I'm going to strike you down," by telling the truth, by telling you that this is how you are, right? But then Goku says, "Oh, you already know." And he decides not to use
Exactly.
it
Yeah,
because
you
he's
already know.
integrated.
Mm-hmm.
And so he
That's a good way to put it.
recognizes that Tien knows that this is what he's doing. And so using the power of the truth against him would only be a waste of his time and energy. So he lets
Krillin,
he lets Krillin land,
Korean.
and
Oh,
he says to him, he says, "Oh, you must have felt that, huh?" And Tien is really excited by this. He says, "I'm so happy that someone like you exists."
And I think he is excited by that for it's not for the same reason, let's say, Goku would be excited by it. I think Tien's excited by it because it is showing him that there's a path that's superior to the one he's on.
Yeah.
Especially with let's say nihilistic tendencies, it's hard to envision a better path in those situations, and that's kind of what leads people down that spiral of that, is that nothing matters. There's no better path. There's nothing that's better at all. But Tien here can see that Goku is at least instantiating something he can respect. And in doing so, he's shown Tien that there is another way of being that he hasn't considered.
This is a good thing about Tien. This is what his third eye means, and this is part of why Roshi had stepped down, right? Because he shows Roshi that he can integrate the truth extremely quickly. And this is part of that where Tien and Goku are having this interchange here. And Tien is very quickly appreciating the value that he can get from Goku. And that's something about his attention, right? In his third eye. He sees what's good about Goku and he recognizes it. And it makes him a really good character because he's not just like an adversarial character. He's someone who's oriented towards trying to better himself in a legitimate way, right? And his attention is literally on what is good about Goku, right? Unlike certain other characters who just say, "Oh, you're low class scum," right? This is someone who treats Goku with respect the whole time.
And can immediately recognize the respect that Goku deserves. And so that's I think you're right to tie that back in. I think that's why the Muten Roshi agrees to step down in the face of the facts that Tien exists and that he is able to accomplish these things. And so one thing to mention, Roshi does notice that they're not out of breath, indicating that the expenditure of their spirit hasn't happened yet. They're still they haven't seen the limits of what they can do.
They're in total control on both sides, right? So nobody's really being worn out. They're conserving their energy and they're really feeling each other out still in the fight. So they're definitely not at the peak of their own abilities.
Exactly, and that's kind of what Roshi acknowledges as the battle rages on.
Though specifically, it is moving well, right? Because we talked about this with Korin's training, and so Goku learned to move well without running out of his breath whenever he had very little to work with, right? That's the whole hermetic experience, and so we see that Tien also has that ability to control his breathing in a fight this intense. So it does contextualize where Tien is on that power level really quickly without having to use a literal number.
Where's
right?
a scouter? I don't know what his power level is. But right, exactly. And so the end of it here, the end of this set of clips ends with them basically resetting. They start in the middle of the ring. Goku forces Tien to the edge before being countered, and they end up in the middle of the ring.
Yeah.
It's really showing how evenly matched they are. And so then Goku splits himself into 10 copies surrounding Tien. Tien attacks a copy of Goku floating above his head, only to be attacked from behind by Goku. To Goku's surprise, this Tien is also a copy, and Tien strikes Goku from behind, telling them that he fell for his own trick. However, this Goku is also a copy, and the real Goku appears next to Tien, kicking him in the head. Upon recovering, Tien tells Goku he's never been in such a situation, having been shamed by him. So, that was a mouthful. This, though, shows we can see. So, this ties back into the Jackie Chun fight, because Jackie Chun tried this attack against Tien, and Tien was able to spot him out and find the real Jackie and knock him. And so it shows the let's say, it shows the inflexibility of the spiritual, or the, let's say, paternal spirit is its weakness, whereas the heroic spirit is able to adapt such that it's unpredictable to the point where it's able to harness that chaos, because it walks down the line between order and chaos. It's able to harness the chaos such that it can achieve victory over the chaos and create order out of it. And so here we see that Goku doesn't do one fake out or two fake outs, but 3 fake outs to Tien, and that is what allows him to shame Tien, because he beats him in a game that Tien is supposed to be a master of, using his third eye, using his attention, his power of attention.
Right. Goku is showing that he can enact a mode of being that goes beyond Tien's sight.
Right. And that he can adapt such that he's always going to be able to do that. It's not just something that, like, oh, well, he did the 3, so next time he does 3, I'll be able to stop him. It's like, no, next time Goku's going to do 4.
And this is why he says it shamed him, right?
Exactly. Because it's just showing him that much more, Goku can do that much more by adopting the truth and the walking the divine path of chaos and order, what he knows, which is the after image technique, and what he doesn't know, which is how Tien's understanding of the after image technique functions. And so he doesn't know how many times he needs to do it, but he's in that middle path where he's able to use his intuition to feel it out. It's almost like Ultra Instinct.
Well, he is acting out, letting his body have the correct reaction, right?
Exactly.
And it's very intuitive what he's done here, because he's guessed what Tien's moves are going to be and has created an elaborate series of versions of himself that are increasingly more likely to be himself, to trick Tien into a position where he would be vulnerable. And so it really does make a game out of his attention.
Yes. And that is ultimately what shames Tien. And so now he's going to take it seriously. Do you have anything else before I move on?
No.
And so Tien yells that playtime is over. Using a solar flare technique, as everyone is blinded, Tien dashes in, preparing a punch toward Goku. Goku, however, catches the punch and counters with one of his own. Stunned, Tien questions how Goku could have withstood the attack before falling to the ground and seeing that Goku is wearing Roshi's sunglasses. We see that Goku was able to anticipate the attack and dash to the side, taking the shades off of Roshi's face. The Crane Hermit is shocked to see Goku use this strategy. As the announcer begins to count, Goku returns to Roshi to return the glasses, and at that moment, Tien launches himself towards Goku, kicking him in the face and breaking the glasses. Roshi cries a little bit. As Goku launches into a counterattack, he's suddenly frozen in air before being kicked by Tien. Goku calls this move unfair, which confuses Tien, and that's kind of where we leave off with the episode. Now, this set of clips is super important.
This is huge.
Huge. So the solar flare technique, we've talked about that before. Go ahead and recap for us, Brock.
It's a twofold technique, right? Tien gestures toward his third eye as he stands as an eclipse before the sun to blind somebody with enlightenment, as if he's faced sort of with his back towards the sun towards you, acting as an eclipse in front of knowledge to blind you with the shocking nature of whatever knowledge they're giving you. That's sort of how we had interpreted it before, right?
Right. It's the idea that the enlightenment itself can function as the sun and can eclipse the actual enlightenment that you gain from real light versus enlightenment.
I mean, think of the effect of a really powerful philosopher on people's minds, right? It's like, what effect did Nietzsche have on the way that people thought?
It blinded their
This
thoughts.
blinding
right? Yeah.
level of enlightenment towards people. And so it really is bringing that. It's like, this is my instantiation. How can you deal with the fact that I can...
Right. I myself, my mode of being is enough to block enlightenment itself. I have the third eye. I can control what enlightenment is, basically. And so that
I can define enlightenment, right?
Is what blinds everyone else, right? It blinds them because to instantiate oneself as being in front of the sun or in front of and blocking out enlightenment itself is an idea that is somewhat unfathomable and cannot be seen, let's say, by other people. And so it blinds most people.
Or you could say that it's a demoralizing force, like damaging somebody's sight is something that damages their attention, which makes them
Yeah. I think that's what we're talking about. I think that's what we're saying too, is that it's seeing...
By demonstrating yourself as being oriented in such a way to eclipse the wisdom that they should be getting.
Let's be specific. Such a way, such an unholy manner, acting in such an unholy manner, being successful in that manner is something that ruins the idea of bettering oneself to begin with, the enlightenment of bettering oneself, which is what blinds people from the solar flare. I think
right. Having sight meaning that you know what to orient your attention toward, which is bettering oneself.
Exactly. What is good to look at, let's say.
And so this disorients or blinds people. Now, what's extremely interesting here is that Goku knows the value of the shades. He puts them on, protects himself from this attack, and then counters Tien's attack. And I talked a little bit before about there's that moment where he asks about it and he learns what the sunglasses do. Because he's known Roshi for all of this time and not once has he asked, what's the purpose of the sunglasses? Right? Which is to say, he has not looked at the nakedness of the father until now.
Right.
And so I pointed out that it was very important because this is an integration of that. This is to understand the function of the nakedness of the father, of the blindness that the father can exhibit in the world, right?
And what is that in this situation?
In this situation, it's Roshi's willingness to look at that mode of being, be willing to embody a mode of being similar to that, and not be blinded to enlightenment, not be blinded to his orientation. And that's what Roshi does.
It's almost like the ability to blind oneself to the nihilism of the world and say it's still worth trying, right?
Right. And the thing that's interesting about Roshi is that he enacts it, right? So if he sees this, it's particularly difficult for somebody like that to integrate that wisdom, right? And so it is that blinding force that can really uh that can disrupt your ability to see where you're going or to orient yourself, right? It's a very disorienting process to see
And
something like that.
demoralizing, like we said.
And so what Roshi has done is he has integrated a mode of being where he's able to see that in the face of that there's still value and there's still a mode of being which can better oneself.
Well, let's say this, right? Does the spiritual father acknowledge the fact that people use their power for evil? Like, how do I want to phrase this? Does the spiritual father see or consider that the knowledge that it propagates can be used for evil purposes? And that would be no, right? The spiritual father propagates the spiritual wisdom it does, regardless of the fact that people can use that.
It can be discerning. It has to be something that's accessible to the archetypal experience.
And let's say this, let me be specific. So something the spiritual father acknowledges, which is the bettering of oneself. Can that be used for malicious means? As we've seen in Tao, yes. But does that mean that Roshi doesn't train students? No. And so the use of the sunglasses is one of those blindnesses that is actually beneficial to the instantiation of the spiritual father. And so the hero is able to borrow upon that ancestral spirit that he's already paid reverence to and use that to blind himself, or let's say shield himself from the knowledge that Tien is espousing here with the solar flare.
Right. What he's saying is, so Tien is turning himself away from the light, trying to eclipse knowledge, to create a shadow in the shape of himself, to dampen Goku's sight, to blind his sight, right? And Goku says, I have integrated the way in which I've even seen this in my master. You're not superseding my view of the world right now. So he's already integrated that. And so what he's doing here is he's standing against it and showing that he's integrated what is lacking in Roshi's sight. And this terrifies the Crane Hermit. The Crane Hermit always has his sunglasses on. He doesn't know at this level how you would fight without them. Right?
Because he's so, let's say, instantiated by that blindness that he can't take them off.
He can't integrate that about his character that is not resolved. Right. And so he keeps his blinders on so that he never has to feel...
he stays in the fog.
Yeah. He hides things in the fog constantly. Right. He's shielding his own vision against enlightenment. And so that is what is happening when Roshi's sunglasses are being broken here. Tien's response to seeing these be used is to immediately break them.
Yes.
And the result of this, we're going to see in the next episode for sure. Because the breaking of these sunglasses is a big, big deal, right?
Right. And we can't really get into it yet.
Right.
We will. But all of the aftermath happens in a minute. But yeah, the breaking of the sunglasses, which is the shattering of the veil between let's say the nakedness of the father and the blindness of the father and the actual instantiation of that spirit. And so we're going to see what are the consequences of that in the next episode. I think.
And that's the thing. By using Roshi's blindness that he's learned, he is revealing Roshi's blindness to everybody who's watching this match. And so it's like by using Roshi's sunglasses, he reveals Roshi to be who he really is.
But it's interesting because Tien doesn't use the solar flare again now that Goku doesn't have sunglasses. He doesn't
Right.
just try it again.
No, he understands what this means, right?
Exactly. He does break the sunglasses, which kind of nullifies both of those things. And so it's a moot point and they move on to the next thing. And as Goku launches into that counterattack, he's like struck with a pain and falls to the ground and then gets kicked by Tien. And that it's made pretty clear, even though we don't know who it is yet, that it is an outside force that's affecting Goku.
Now we do see a shot of the Crane Hermit look at this fight and then stare at Chaozu, and then Chaozu looks surprised.
Yes.
Right.
And so we're gonna
And
get
then after this
all
happens,
into
we
that.
pan to Crane Hermit looking satisfied and Chaozu sweating.
Yes, and so we're gonna get all into that in the next episode.
Right.
Anything else you want to add for this one?
No. I think that the most important thing to take away from this is just how challenging this is to the Crane Hermit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Crane Hermit
And it's building, yeah.
being afraid of what it would mean to break through the glasses, right?
And show one's true self, right.
It's not something that and we're going to talk, I think, a little bit about our good old friend Inoshi Kacho in the next episode, because
okay, yeah.
because there is this willful blindness integration that is the interplay now that's going between Goku and Tien, right? Understanding what you need to pay attention to and what you don't need to pay attention to, what you should be blind to whenever you're interacting out all in the world, right?
And how once that consciousness reaches a certain point, it has to be a decision that's made. There's no more ignoring it, let's say, unless one decides to put on the glasses and become blinded.
And the ability to do that while staying integrated on the path is really sort of what this is about, right?
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think that's a good place to end it. We're going to see what happens next time with Goku in trouble at the hands of Tien in this 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai. I'm your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brock.
And we hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you liked what you heard, give us a like. Subscribe to our channel. We upload on Mondays and Thursdays. Rumble Tuesdays and Fridays. We'd appreciate if you guys leave a comment whether you agree or disagree. And we hope you guys have a good night.